I love 1985's Mr. Vampire. It's the perfect mix of kung fu, comedy and mysticism. Show me more to satiate my appetite. Welcome to Jacob Film, exploring the outer edges of the film universe. We mentioned Pu Songling's Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio in our Encounter the Spooky Kind review. Inspired by Chinese ghost stories, many of which can be found in Pu Songling's Strange Tales from a Chinese Studio. A bit like the grim fairy tales for the East.
See, I did say that.
Very clever.
His two most prominent creatures are fox spirits, which you can find in films like Painted Skin, and the Guernsey, or Chinese hopping vampires. Unlike the seduction of Count Dracula or the boyish good looks of Edward Cullen, Chinese vampires are more like zombies, hence their stiff nature. Mr. Vampire mixed real Taoist practices, a religion and tradition that seeks to become one with nature, with mythology. So, what do you need to defeat a Chinese vampire? Sticky rice. It burns them. Black ink mixed with chicken blood. Hits them like a taser to the chest. Yellow talisman. Stops them dead. Peachwood sword. Like the Presidents of the United States, they don't like peaches.
I'm moving to the country, gonna eat a lot of peaches.
Fire. Well, it burns them. Mr. Vampire 2 is the only film to be set in the modern day, when a family of vampires are discovered in a cave by a professor and his two bumbling assistants. One of them is bitten. Seeking help from Lam Ching Ying and his son-in-law, who happens to be, you guessed it, Yuen Biao, they must use their abilities to take out the vampire family. There are three main set pieces, all set in the same location, the professor's lab. The most inventive being when a retarding gas is released and everyone moves in slow motion, really using Yuen Biao's acrobatic prowess. There is very little kung fu on display though. The yellow talisman is explained further and becomes integral to the first piece of action. Sticky rice is briefly used. A simple light is used to fend a vampire off. The peach sword is utilised by Lam, shocking them with a great visual effect. And of course, a good old shotgun seems to do the job. Despite some inventive action and a desire to do something different, large parts of the film are taken up by the child vampire of the family, befriending a small girl, which is not anything anyone signed up for. Mr. Vampire 3 returns to a period setting and centres on Richard Ng as a fraudulent Taoist priest who uses friendly ghosts that he stores in an umbrella to part scared patrons out of their money. You're just jealous you didn't think of it. However, Lam Ching Ying's real Taoist priest comes to the rescue when the village is attacked by some black magic wielding horse warriors. Their words, not ours. The opening set piece featuring the village fighting off the black magic wielders, is amazing, featuring twisted heads, wonderful sweeps, and slit throats. There's also a great fight later as Lam Ching Ying takes on the chief villain. Not only do we get the wooden peach sword, but we also have a money sword, which is made up of ghost money, and you can actually find one in the British Museum. The idea of using your own blood as a way to slit magic skin is also nicely used. Sticky rice is also used alongside an 8-sided mirror, and of course an umbrella as a vessel for ghosts.
1、2、3。好啦，一遮收晒，一天都光晒。
There's loads to like here, from great action to new magical elements. The comedy is a little trying at times, with some unnecessary cruel moments as returning actor Billy Lau tortures some of the good ghosts. Worth a watch, just not a patch on the original, and it doesn't actually feature any vampires. Mr. Vampire 4 centres on a warring Shaolin monk, industry legend Wu Ma, and a Taoist priest, Anthony Chan. Neighbours who play ridiculous pranks on each other for the majority of the film, until they eventually have to team up with their disciples against an escaped vampire. There is a fun introduction to Anthony Chan's priest. He takes on a fox spirit, and if you were listening earlier, you'll know what that is. Then at the end of the film, you get your action fix, when the vampire escapes and takes on disciple Ching Lok. Rarely used, but his amazing acrobatic skills are really on display. Then, eventually, the two priests team up and fight the vampire in a 20-minute sequence, which is truly breathtaking. The yellow talisman and a bell is used to herd the vampires. The rivals use a voodoo doll, a bulb of garlic apparently snapping you out of it. A rotating mirror freezes you, and we get the classic black ink, used to contain the vampire within the coffin. Among the elements used to defeat the vampire, there's a wooden sword, a special rope, and sticky rice water. Finally, some good old poison. Seems to do the job. The end sequence is as good as you could ask for any of these type of films, with acrobatics, stunt work, comedy, and supernatural shenanigans thrown together. Unfortunately, it's a slog to get through the rest of the film, with an overtly comedic theme set up from the get-go, rather than starting with horror and weaving it in later. Vampire vs. Vampire. Lam Ching Ying finally directs himself as the one-eyebrow priest. What starts out as a conventional tomfoolery with useless assistants and a child vampire, of course, morphs into the unusual as he must take on a Western vampire, linked to the rebuilding of a Christian church. Lam takes on a banana tree ghost at the start, don't ask, whereas Siu Ho uses his usual martial art prowess to save a young prostitute, only for that subplot not to go anywhere. And of course, there's loads of great wirework goodness between Lam and the European vampire. Moonlight, and not sunlight, seems to be a problem for Chinese vampires. While the coin sword and the yellow talisman both make an appearance. The Western vampire controls bats, doesn't like sunlight, and like Dracula before him, appears more human as he feeds. Finally, good old fire seems to defeat Chinese and European vampires alike. This film is absolutely nuts. Again, it features too much of a child vampire and is clearly a little bit anti-Christian at its heart. It does stand out for having a European-style vampire and decent action thrown in for good measure. What's the verdict then on Hopping Mad, the Mr. Vampire sequels? Well, I've always loved Mr. Vampire. It's one of the first films that I watched, and I love the mix of those supernatural elements, kung fu, and a little bit of comedy. Hadn't seen anything like it before. The problem is with most of these sequels is it doesn't quite get the mix right. There's either too much comedy and the budget goes down really as the films go along, and you can tell they put less effort into it. Having said that, it is a great little box set. Is it a good Halloween present? I would say it is. And each film does offer something new. So if you do like these films, it is worth giving these a go. And there's little bits, little gems that you can take from each one. And it was fun to go through it once again. What's the best one of the bunch? It comes down to your own view. For me, I think Mr. Vampire 3 is probably the best. It captures a lot of the elements of the first film, with some interesting subplots with Richard Ng and his ghost in the umbrella, something you never really would have thought of adding as a plot. Yes, not everything works, and the end monster is a bit ridiculous, but overall, it's probably the strongest. So, was it fun? I would say it was. Go and check it out.